Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Honest Concepts Podcast. So glad that you were able here to join us this fine evening. Sir, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine.
Good.
Thank you very much. So my name is Sensei Bronson Long. This is my instructor, Master Autry.
Yes.
Sir, I've been taking martial arts from you for most of my life now.
Yeah, 12, 13 years.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we've had such growth in my life and such good memories and fondness of this stuff. You taught me so much more than just martial arts. Really, truly, you raised me up in so many different ways. And it's an honor now that I get to come by every Tuesday at 8 o'clock, and we get to do the Tuesday 7:30 every day and every Tuesday and do these podcasts with you. So every week we do a different topic.
We do.
You know, I pick one, then you pick one, and we go back and forth. And sometimes we have viewers that give us some topics we get to go over. And so,
last week was Pool Mike.
Yes, sir. And that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing that. So that's really great. And so, really the show is so much more than just our walk through martial arts. It's more importantly our walk through life.
Right.
And though the martial arts has had a great effect on myself, and I'm sure it's done the same thing for you as well, but it's so great that a lot of those principles really do get to fold into...
Actually, they do. I mean, we can use it every part of our life.
Yes.
Everything I've learned in the dojo, I've actually put towards life, and it does help you a lot of different situations for sure.
Absolutely. So one of the things I've heard you teach, actually I've seen you teach some amazing seminars on this before, about setting goals.
Right.
And I've always heard you talk about short-term, mid-term, long-term goals, but the question tonight is what happens when you don't set goals?
I'm first.
You're first.
Okay. To me, like I said, I'm not a psychologist, guys, so let you know that up front. But to me, the first thing is you find things that have no value. You look at something, you start searching, and something has no value because you've got no goal to set. Second thing is this old saying, even something beautiful can cast a shadow.
Ooh.
It looks really cool, but it's going to have a shadow. And usually there's a price to pay when the shadow's there. Direction is everything in life, whether it's marriage or your religion or a partnership or friends or something. You have to have a direction. Both of you have to have a direction. And usually your best friends or your best marriage or best whatever, you have the same direction in life. Me and Ms. Alter, we have the same direction. We want the same things out of life. So usually your best friend or a good friend of yours, you have the same goals. You don't, if somebody wants to go out and live on the street and just be a bum, that's fine. But somebody wants to work hard and make a good living, just are not going to be friends because they have nothing in common. Wow. They have no goals together. So when you don't set goals, that's the start of the problems. Wow. That's what I think. But
very good answer. Even something beautiful cast a shadow. I like that. I've never heard that phrase before.
Yeah.
It's poetic. I like that very much. But I agree with you. Goals do set direction.
Right.
It kind of sets the standard, or at least the structure, direction that you're going to be going towards for whatever it is. Or
Sure.
you want to get a college degree or pay off your mortgage or whatever you're trying to do. And setting goals is what gives you direction.
Yeah.
And without that, you're kind of lost. There's nowhere that you're going. I think what you said about you and your wife is so spot on. I heard somebody say one day that marriage changes when you guys stop pulling against each other, like a game of tug of war.
Right.
All of a sudden, when you start pulling the rope on the same end, you start to go somewhere.
That's true.
It's so true. It's amazing what happens when you guys can do that. I think I'd maybe taken this in a different direction.
There you go. We always do.
I love it. So I was thinking earlier today while I was making some coffee about this, and we're big coffee fans here. This is kind of deep, in my opinion. What do I know? But I think when you don't set goals, long-term speaking, when you don't set goals, you end up having no hope. You lose hope.
Wow.
Yes, sir. The reason why I say that is
That's
because...
good.
Yes, sir.
That's good.
Yes, sir. I thought of this earlier today. That sometimes we talk about church here and Bible
Absolutely.
and stuff. There's a famous saying Jesus says, "What did you go out to see? Is a reed shaking in the wind." And I used to be somebody like that. Just a reed shaking in the wind, no direction. Always getting blown around and tossed around by any old wind that comes your way. There's no direction. like how you said, no goals is no direction. You run this way. Maybe there's something down here for me I can get a hold of. Found some foundation in my life. Well, there's nothing there, so I got to turn around and go back the other way.
Right.
You're just bouncing around. And when I say you, I mean me. I lived it, bouncing around all over the place. No direction. And before you know it, you look around, you look at yourself, you say, I feel like I've tried everything. I feel like I've gone every direction. There's nothing for me there. Is there anything for me at all? Is there anything left for me? And you begin to lose hope.
And you wore out and you're in the same spot.
Yeah, you didn't go anywhere. Exactly.
Man, I'm slap tired. I've tried everything.
Right.
Where I'm in the same spot I was at.
Yes. I heard somebody say one day, I love this phrase so much, there's a time where it really resonated with me. It says, the good news is, man, you came a long way. The bad news is, man, you went the wrong way. And I felt that so much when I was younger. But that's truly what goals will do, is give you direction. And like you said, when you have direction, you begin to see something at the end of the tunnel.
You do.
When you see that light, it brings about hope.
Sure.
When there's no light, there's no hope.
Sure.
And it's, to me, it just makes sense that way.
No, that was very well put. Your core thoughts have to be strong. Your faith in God has to be strong. Your faith in your wife has to be strong. Your faith in your podcast partner has to be strong. If it's not strong, it starts breaking down. Mm-hmm. It's like a sugar cube getting drops of water on it. It just starts dissolving.
Yes, sir.
And that's how I look at it. And that's what happens. When it starts breaking down, then the direction is nowhere, because it's not strong. You have to have a strong, committed direction. Now, you can change it. I mean, I've had a strong, to open up school and this, and it didn't work quite like I wanted. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you a story real quick. Me and Ms. Autry, we hadn't been married too long. I said, I want to open up a school. She said, okay, that sounds really neat. We were young. We were just, we didn't know. She said, where do you want to open a school at? I said, either Wilmington or Asheville, right? It was Asheville, North Carolina. So I went to Asheville first. I'm not a big mountain person. So I looked around. It was okay, but it's not what I really wanted. I said, I want to go to the beach and open up. So I go down to Wilmington. I was like, man, this is nice. I might just open my school here. I might move here and open. I turned down this road. I saw a billboard about the size of this house. It said Chuck Norris School. I'm like, what? Then I turned down another road. Chuck Norris School's coming. I said, what? We saw about 4 or 5 billboards saying Chuck Norris School was going to come there in a couple of weeks. I said, I think I'll just go home and rethink this. I had a direction,
right,
but I had a goal, but that wasn't it.
Right.
So I came back, and I just stayed the course where I was at, and it grew into, good Lord blessed it, and it grew really nice.
Right.
But sometimes we think we want to go a direction, and then billboards will tell you, no.
Yes, sir. That's very,
Chuck
very
Norris
true.
is going to be there.
That's so true. It's funny how that works sometimes. At the end of the day, I mean, a plan is better than no plan. Right?
Absolutely.
I've been with you on a handful of occasions. You go into people's homes, you work with them on God forbid the case, an intruder were to come into the house. Right. And I've heard you say so many times, the best thing you can do is at least have a plan for this scenario, and you walk those people through a plan, and it's, brings people a lot of closure there.
Sure.
And I think it brings a lot of closure into your own life when you're just thinking about a plan, At what age do I think I can realistically retire, or along those lines?
Sure.
Get some type of plan. Is it going to go the way you planned it? Probably not.
It never does.
It never does.
Never.
Nothing does.
It's rare.
Yes, sir. But at least you've got some type of structure and a foundation to stand upon on your way there.
Yeah.
I think a plan is better than no plan.
Right, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. All right, we got a couple of comments already.
I bet the person's pool mic.
You know what? You're right. Pool Mike says, so are you saying if you don't have goals, you can't be successful?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I've seen people have no goal and win a $5 million lottery.
Sure. Yeah.
they have no goal.
Absolutely.
I've seen people stumble on something. Yeah, it happens. But for me, that does happen. And I don't believe. I believe you can not have any plans and be at the right place at the right time.
Right.
A guy just walks into a business and he says, "Hey, I'm gonna make you a senior partner."
Right.
I'm sure it happens. But to me, you got to have a plan to achieve things. I mean, I'd rather make a plan and not work than wish on luck.
Yes, sir.
Me personally.
I think it goes both ways. In response to Pool Mike, I think it goes both ways. Yeah, it is. Actually, it's kind of a fun little tester there. That just as your story went, you had a plan, you had a direction, you had an idea of where you're going to go. And it wasn't a pipe dream. You're pretty good at starting martial arts schools, you know.
I've been lucky.
Yes,
so
sir.
lucky.
Yes, sir. So it's not like as if, you know, it just wasn't meant to be.
Right.
Well, the same thing goes for the other guy who might not have any goals. For him, it was just meant to be.
Right.
You know, it sometimes lots just fall in life. You pick up the right card in the game and you're set.
I know people that way. I guess you do too. You know.
I sure do.
I've seen people that couldn't add 2 and 2, and they're making $300,000 a year.
Yes,
You're
sir.
like, man, I wish I was not that good in math.
Right.
I've seen it.
Yes, sir.
I've seen making $300,000 a
So
year,
funny.
and I'm washing dishes at a restaurant,
Right.
trying to get one student.
Yes, sir. For those of us that didn't draw the lucky straw out of the jar, we need goals. You know? That's a good question, Paul Mike. I enjoyed that. Thank you for that. His next thing is he says, I disagree somewhat. By limiting yourself to a goal, what opportunities do you miss? Actually, I agree with your disagreement. There are such a thing as limitations.
Right.
You know,
Could you read that one more time for me?
sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. He says, I disagree somewhat. By limiting yourself to a goal, what opportunities do you miss? And I think limit is the key word there when you limit yourself to a goal. If my goal is to, we'll just keep something simple. Let's say my goal is to lose 5 pounds.
Okay.
Well, I missed the opportunity to lose 6.
Right.
You know, and I think the word limit there is really what's the key word in that sentence. But I don't think goals necessarily means narrow vision, though. You know, as if I'm arm wrestling here with you, Mr. Pool Mike, and of course I mean it with all friendliness. I don't necessarily think that goals mean to have a narrow vision, to miss opportunity.
Right.
You know.
And you can have more than one goal.
Sure.
You know, my uncle had a great saying. He called me Richie. He said, Richie, let me tell you something. I went somewhere and made a couple of dollars, and I was complaining about not making enough. He said, I'd rather make $5 than almost make 50.
Mm.
And, I had a plan to go make $5,
Right.
and I made $5. I wanted to make 50, but, I stuck to the course. I went to the guy's house. I did some work. He paid me $5.
Sure.
And I wanted a bit more. But he told me, he said, I'd rather make $5 than almost make 50. I'd rather have the plan and maybe miss it than to not have a plan or a goal and just kind of go around.
Sure.
And like I said, it does happen.
And things shift
Yeah,
along
sure
the
it
way. And I don't know why my brain is coming up with this analogy here, but if I'm on a hunt, I'm about to go hunt some meat and I'm going to bring it home to the tent for the family, right?
Right.
Bring some meat back to the tribe. Let's say I'm hunting a buffalo or something. I don't know, I'm just making it up. I'm not going to pass up the coconut tree. I'm not going to not pick the strawberries along the way.
Right.
So I do think
That's
that
actually good.
perhaps, you could limit yourself. And you're right, Paul Mike. The more I consider your idea, I think you're right.
Actually, it is. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I see what he's saying.
Absolutely. You can definitely limit yourself along the way.
And you can change your course too.
Sure.
My goal is to go here, and all of a sudden you say, you know what? I can kind of see where it's going. I think I'm going to alter it.
Mm-hmm.
But at least you have a goal. At least
Right.
you have something.
Right.
I've altered my goals 1,000 times.
Yes, sir, right. Yeah, it certainly does happen. It's happened to me in the martial arts a handful of times. You think your goal, when you first start off, when you're 15 years old, my goal is I just want to fight stuff.
Right.
And then before you know it, your goal is like, a black belt wouldn't be too bad. And then the darker your belts get, you're like, I don't really think that black belt matters to me too much anymore. I just want to be here. I just want to be a part of this. And then get older, my goal is to share this. It's amazing how you're staying on the same path, and yet for some reason your goals
Let me ask
change.
you this. What's your goal right now?
Oh, man.
If somebody said you can tell me, you can give me 2 goals, what would they be?
Well, one of them is a very selfish goal, but it's the honest truth. The show is our thoughts and our experiences. My goal right now is to soak up as much knowledge and experience from you as possible. That's been my goal for like 12 years, but that stays the same. Is that you are the founder of your system. You've got, I'm talking you up, and you wouldn't do it because you're humble.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. You so much knowledge and just so much experience in the martial arts. It'd be foolish for me not to continually soak up the
I didn't
information.
even say
from
that. I
you.
wouldn't
Yes,
ask
sir. My other goal is that's the honest, and it's a selfish goal because it's
Yeah.
purely self-pleasing goal.
Right.
It's just for me to do better in my own life. My other goal in martial arts is one that I think is not so selfish. Is that you always taught me, and I agree with this 100%. Vacations are good. and taking time off of things is fine, but we do our very, very best to never miss a class.
Right.
You know, try not to be out of town. I wash my hands all the time, do everything I can to not miss a class.
Right.
This is my luck being the one day I'm out sick or the one day class gets canceled is that day that kid who's getting bullied at school walks up to the door, shakes it, finds out it's locked, and that's it.
Yeah.
He's hopeless. That was his one last thing he wanted to do. Nothing's going right, and that's it for him. And so my goal as a martial artist is to do exactly what you did for me.
Wow.
And, you know, it's beyond punching and kicking, but to take, you know, some kid who's just got no more hope left in his life and just restore a little bit of life there. If I can do that to one person, I can die happy, man.
Yeah.
So that is my goal there. Mr. Ben says, would setting limits for yourself also be good for... Yes. Okay, yes, I think so. Would setting limits for yourself also be good for you? I think so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. There's certain things that I can't do. I can't be president of the United States. I just can't do it. There's some things. I remember reading the Time for Kids magazine when I was in elementary school, and it said on there, in 2020, NASA plans to go back to the moon. So I did math real quick, and I was like, oh, I'll be old enough to work for NASA. I could go to the moon. Well, I can't do that. My grades wasn't good enough, and made some other decisions that would restrict me from being a NASA astronaut. So yeah, I think it's healthy to put certain limits on things and to at least have a healthy understanding of that, but also not to take it too far. You can do a lot more than what you think you can. You can do a lot more than what others tell you as well.
I bet people coming to school, and, you know, they're just 18, 19, 20 years old. I'd say everybody always asks, what's your goal? And that's a hard question sometimes to ask, especially if you don't know somebody. They'd say, my only goal is to get a black belt. I'm like, wow. A lot of people said that. I'm like, okay. I'd ask somebody younger or somebody older, and they'd say, my goal is to get a black belt. One guy came in one day, I can't remember his name, was school in Matthews. He was probably 22, 23. I said, just what would your goal be here in the martial arts? He said, well, this is going to sound silly or goofy, I think he said. He said, but I just want the experience. I want the experience of being around people and learning. I'm like,
Oh.
man,
That's
what
a
he
good
said.
one.
Yeah, I wanted to hug you.
Hey, I'll take that.
He probably, I won't train you. But that's what he said. I just want the experience. I just want to learn. I just want to enjoy it. And I'm like, wow, you know, what a great answer.
Wow.
Everybody says, I want this, I want this. Everybody wants stuff. You know, that's true. But he just wanted to enjoy it.
Right.
You know, and I was like, wow. I remember him to this day. I think he stayed about a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Yeah, that's a fun question there, Mr. Ben. Definitely fun. I would say that limiting yourself is healthy, but healthy is a strong word there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure 10 years ago somebody could have looked at me and been like, hey, I don't know if you're going to make it as far as you think you will, but you can do so much more. Pool Mike says, I bet this podcast goes way over an hour.
I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you know, how are you going to end this? How do we end this podcast?
Miss Jenny Easter says,
Hey, Miss Jenny, how you
I
doing?
hope you're having a great day today. Miss Jenny Easter says, I would think that making a goal is just a starting point of what you are striving for. And in a lot of ways that is the truth. I'll read that one more time. I would think that making a goal is just a starting point of what you are striving for.
That's spot on.
She's actually 100% right.
Yeah.
Some of those students who say they want a black belt, and this is not condescending at all, they really don't know what they mean when they say that.
No.
They don't know what comes with that. the years of, you know, sacrifice and training and time and you know, the mature and the growth that you're going to make inside. That's what that belt represents. It doesn't represent that you can kick some wood and break boards and stuff. It really represents who you are inside. Something's changed in order for you to get that belt. So I think a lot of times it is like that. You set a goal because you have an idea. You know, I think I like that. I think that's what I want to do. You really, no one can know what's at the end of that trail until you get there, you know.
A lot of times people have a goal and they'll be like, you know, they hold it in. Remember, you and I was doing a test up there in Stanley, North Carolina. Pretty good sized martial arts school. We probably had, I don't know, 30, 40 people testing. And there were some parents. There must have been 100 people, 200 people watching. And I went to this one guy over there and invited him out on the floor. Remember that?
Oh, I do remember this. He was a preacher.
He was he a preacher?
I think so, yes,
Was
sir. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I asked him out on the floor, and he wanted to take lessons. He said, "This is a goal of mine to come out here forever." I just happened to pick him out. He came right out on the floor. See the one I said he went going swimming?
Yeah.
Take out some out of his pocket.
He's just dropping his wallet, his keys.
Just come out on the floor.
He ain't swimming, man.
Yeah, going swimming. I'm just going to show you a self-defense technique. But he told me his goal was to always come out on that floor.
That is so cool.
That's funny, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
I
That's
remember that.
amazing. That's amazing. No, that's hilarious.
remember that?
Oh, I remember that clear as day.
There
Yes,
was a lot
sir.
of people there.
It was a humongous test. I remember that clear as day. Pool Mike says, you have to be careful with goals. If you set them too low, it's not really a goal. It is an impediment. The goal setter and what they're setting, I think, is a big thing. You and I were talking before we did other podcasts. We got some cool stuff going on in the background, some seminars and stuff that we're working on doing. And I wrote down the words while I was listening to you talk, build confidence. And I never really thought about it this way until today. And we always think about build confidence, almost like as if you're pouring water into a glass. It just fills up like that. But when I wrote the word build, it really hit me. It's like, I never thought about this before, but confidence really does have to be built. Mm-hmm. It's one brick at a time. Lay some mortar, one brick at a time. It's something that takes time and stages and moves up in, different levels. And for some people, your goals are like that too in your life. You're moving up one step at a time. For some people, my goal is just to get a driver's license. And then what you do with that, I'm going to get a job with my driver's license. Right. And then the steps just continue to progress, whether it's through confidence or goals. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from there, Pool Mike, that sometimes it can be some type of impediment. There's another quote.
Go ahead.
I heard somebody say one time that if you believe in God, then one thing's for sure. If you didn't aim too high, then you aim too low. And I really like that quote. Is that there are certain things in this world that you really can do. You just have to do it. You have to make yourself be there.
I tell you, he's right. We could talk about this for 5 hours.
Actually, I like this.
I do too. Gosh, there's so much stuff I won't say, but when kids come in, everybody always hears in martial arts schools or dancing or even work, whatever, you set short-term goals, mid-term goals, and long-term goals. And the reason I feel like people do that is because a short-term goal, you can reach it. Mm-hmm. And that gives you the confidence, like you say, building that block. You got the first block in the paver in the patio. I got that first block.
Right.
The midterm goal is a little harder, but I got that block in. The long-term goal maybe is to get a black belt. And you get that goal, now you're going. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. The hardest thing is, to me, is when you're sitting there and people want to do short-term, mid-term, long-term goals. The short-term goal, they can't reach it, and they struggle.
Wow.
And they struggle.
Right.
That, to me, that is just hard to watch them do that. Especially students. I see that a lot. So what you try to do is change their goal. Mm. I had a couple of kids that had disabilities through the years. They couldn't do things other people could do, and he set a goal that I knew he probably couldn't do because physically he couldn't do it.
Right.
So he set a goal, we wrote it down, and I knew he couldn't do it, but as he started progressing, he was getting a little aggravated. Let's change this goal,
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, it's way tough. I mean, I've slept a lot of nights with my eyes open, worried about that kid. But we changed the goals a little bit. Instead of, jumping and breaking a board, why don't we just try to break a board? Or why don't we do a takedown, a special takedown?
Right.
Let's work on that. Nobody else has ever done that. Okay. Because sometimes you have things in your body that won't let you do it. Mm-hmm. So you have to change the goals for that reason.
Wow. Wow.
And you'll run across that.
Yes, sir. Very well said. That's something to chew on there. I'm glad you said that. That's very interesting. I haven't quite ran across something like that just yet. To kind of segue, something similar but also in a different direction, talk about impediments or impeding yourself with certain things. I don't know if this is something you or anybody else in the chat has ever experienced before, but this hit me pretty good. Probably, I don't know, two years ago maybe, somewhere around there. I hit my goals. I did everything I wanted to do. You know what I mean? The goals that I had, I felt really, really good about. I got some things settled in my life. I got a home. I paid off every bit of debt that I had other than my mortgage. It was just a goal of mine.
Absolutely.
I wanted to do it, you know. It's something I set my mind to do. We set so many goals, my wife and I, and within about a span of 2 or 3 years, we were just going bananas, nose to the grindstone, and we hit every single one of them. Wow. And then I sat there, and I knew what I wanted to do next. But my problem is that it felt like in my life, it felt like I'd climbed this mountain. I worked so hard. I mean, 3 years straight. That's not a lot. I was, working 6-7 days a week for 3 years straight. And we were going crazy. And I got to the top of that mountain, and I said, wow, I did it. But then I looked over to the next mountain that I knew I had to climb. That's the one I wanted to get. And I didn't budge. I sat there for like a year. I just sat there and stared at it for a year. I didn't want to do it. I mean, I still lived my life. I still taught martial arts, still did things. But I looked at that mountain. I was just, it weighed on me for about a year. And luckily, I have 2 excellent counselors in my life, you and Mrs. Autry. And we talked about it a little bit. And you were like, you don't have to do that. You don't have. You want to climb it, and that's okay if you want to, but you don't have to. And that made me feel so much better about things.
There's a saying in the martial arts, and I mean, I have to go to that because that's all I've ever done. There's a saying in martial arts. This guy said, I want to get a black belt. Every day he trains, broken bones, stitches, and he gets his green belt, his purple belt, his brown belt. He climbs his mountain, like you're talking about, climbs his mountain. He gets there, he finally gets his black belt. They tie that black belt on him. He looks out. He realizes one thing. He wasn't climbing the mountain. He was just at the foothills. The mountains are still above him.
Wow.
You can find that in Master Funikoshi's book. But he looked there and he says, you know what? I climbed this mountain and I thought this was the biggest mountain in the world. He says, I just realized I was just at the foothills.
Wow.
I look out and now I see the mountains ahead of me. So I don't care who you are, what you do, how much money you make, what kind of job you have. I don't care how great you are, whoever, whatever. You're at the foothills. I don't think anybody ever climbs that mountain.
I don't think so.
I don't.
It's very daunting.
Yeah.
That was excellent. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Connor Rain comes in. She says, I like to keep my main goals vague when talking to people about them. I never want to overpromise and under-deliver. And I can definitely understand that. It's one of the things I've used this term on this podcast before. It says, if people don't know your dreams, they can't shoot them down.
Absolutely.
Keep
Absolutely.
that stuff close to your chest,
right.
So also, some people will do everything they can to prevent you from reaching your goals when they hear them for some reason.
It's called jealousy.
You're 100% right.
It's all jealousy most of the time. We talked about this, I think, last week. We've
done this once before. Yeah, which is 100% right.
That's why you don't tell people your ideas.
Right. Yeah, something weird about that. Miss Jenny Easter is replying to Connor Rain. I love this. I love you guys are having a conversation. It's so awesome. So those are the people that don't deserve to know your goals. Yeah, that's so funny. Wow.
But I bet you're the same way.
Sure.
I was talking with my neighbor today. Her name is Miss Sarah. If you're on the line, hey, Miss Sarah, how you doing? Enjoy talking to you. Me and Miss All you doing? We're not really good, great friends, but we're good neighbors.
Sure.
I know of them. Nice lady. Her husband's nice. And I was telling her about the podcast. I even gave her a card. And I had an idea about doing something. I told her, and she said, "Man, that's a great idea." I said, "Usually I don't tell people stuff. Yeah, it just came out."
Right.
But that's what happens. If somebody tells me or tells you an idea, I'm all, "Man, this is great. Go ahead and do it."
Right.
I never pick it apart.
I want you to win.
I want you to win. That's the difference. Somebody would be like, I wouldn't do that. Are you kidding me? I don't do that. I never. Even if I think it's a bad idea, if it's a goal they have, I'm for them.
Yes,
I'm pulling for them. I don't care who it is. That's just.
I want you to win.
I want you to win.
Want you to.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to see you.
That's
up
the
there.
first thing Miss Sarah said today. She said, "Man, that's a great idea."
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate that. I really do.
Yes, sir. Those are good people.
Yeah.
And those are always good interactions there. Before we get out of here, so it's 8:00 already. But before we get out of here, I learned that behavior from martial arts school.
Yeah.
I'd never experienced that feeling before. I was never a jealous person. I never wanted to tear people down. I never had it in me. But I never really got a whole lot of joy seeing other people succeed until I went to your school. Really, that's a true thing. Good for you.
Yeah.
You know, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, but when I went to your school, I started to see things differently.
Yeah.
You know, you see somebody who's struggling with the technique, or they have a hard time getting in front of other people. Some kids have a hard time, public speaking, whatever it is, and one brick at a time, building them up.
Like I said, we end up being a psychologist more than anything.
Yes,
Even
sir.
though I'm not a psychologist.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's every walks of life. Right quick, I never got in, but had this young man. He was great kid, or great young man. He trained all the way to black belt. He was going to test for his black belt. I gave him his paper, had his uniform, had his name order printed, his black belt, everything ready. He was going to test in 20 minutes. I get a phone call. I don't think I can test. I said, excuse me? He said, I just don't think I'm ready. He had a hard time getting in front of people. And he had worked so hard. I kept his belt and his uniform as a gi top for about 10 or 15 years. In fact, it was probably 20 years. I finally got rid of it about 10 years ago.
Wow.
I kept it for 20 years. I was
Wow.
going to mail it to him.
Because he earned
He
it.
earned it. But
Right.
he had to come there and test, and get a certificate and all. But he just didn't want to get in front of people.
Wow.
You remember that, Ms. Ultra?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great guy.
Wow.
Great guy.
That is so interesting. Ain't that something?
Yeah.
Wow. Sir, I enjoyed this so
Yeah, me
very
too.
much.
It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. To the
I enjoy the
people-
comments.
Oh, me too.
That's fun.
Yeah,
This is cool.
Thought provoking
Yeah.
and creates conversation. It's fun to see you guys talking in the chat with each other. It's awesome. So yeah, thank you for the lurkers and thank you guys for the chatters. We appreciate it. Sir, is there anything I'm missing or wanting to say before we get out of
If
here?
they got some topics for next week or week after next, just shoot them to us.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, if you guys check the description in the video, there's an email address there. Feel free to just send your ideas for topics over.
Yeah.
And we'd love to talk about it.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Have a good night,
See you
guys.
later.
See ya.